Hi, welcome back to another episode of the Bonsai Stuff podcast. It's me, Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu, as always, and we're looking this time to wrap up 2021. Final podcast for the year. Thanks for stopping by again. Thanks for listening. Really appreciate the loyal support that you guys give me, and I'm glad that the podcast has a positive impact on so many people, which is exactly what it's intended to do. It's meant to be a positive shining light in bonsai for everybody, all inclusive. Everybody involved in bonsai hopefully gets something out of this. I know I definitely do. By putting it all together, it makes me feel very positive, and I'm looking forward to having a Christmas break, as I'm sure many people around the world are as well. So thanks for stopping by. Let's get into this one. So 2021, it's a year not dissimilar for many of us to 2020. But if this year's taught me anything, it's taught me to think about what matters most to me, and for bonsai especially. And bonsai is all about happiness. Happiness is about setting goals, setting new targets, and also achieving some of those goals as well along the way. And that's really important to make sure that you do have mini windfalls along the way. It's no point picking up a fresh new bonsai and saying within 3 months this thing will be whatever it's going to be, because that just won't happen. The end point is not the target. The target is those small little steps, incremental steps we can take along the way, which might be a nice flush of new fresh growth in spring to show that the work we've done when we've been repotting has worked. Or it might be that we start getting some secondary growth on our primary branching to start to develop the structure of those branches somewhere down the track. So they're the mini goals that we set. It could be something really small, like having a flowering tree that you work on and you prune correctly and you manage its growth accurately, so when flowering time does come around, the thing produces the flowers. You haven't pruned them all off when you've been hacking into the tree consistently. So those little things can definitely put a smile on your face, and that's what's, I suppose, proven to me to be important, is focusing on those small little wins that we can get. Another thing that I love too is finding natural beauty of trees. Whether it's walking through a park or it's going for a run down the street and looking at the nature strip trees around the local area, or it's seeing something pop up on Facebook that someone else has done with a bonsai, or whatever it is. It's just, I think that natural beauty in trees can be something that we zip past with artistic intent to do something with trees. But I think that the natural form of trees and the wonder that they've got, it's truly remarkable, and it's something that I think all people involved in bonsai, in one shape or another, maybe early days you don't quite appreciate it, but as the journey continues on and you grow to love trees more and more, that the natural form of things and how they grow and how they can survive, and their strength and their ability to flourish in some of the harshest environments. I hear it a lot with people wanting to design trees to look a certain way, especially early days in their journey, and this tree has had this sort of an impact and its story is this behind it. That's well and good, but I think it's when you find those trees in nature and you can see those stories, you can see the hardship that these trees have been through, whether it's surviving a bushfire that's devastated acres and acres of land, and house upon house have been destroyed, and these trees, these remarkable trees that have learned to live in this harsh environment, and you go past them and have a look, and they're popping. They're fully alive with growth. They've been through this hardship, and they've come out the other side, and they're looking to continue on for another couple of 100 years. It's really remarkable. So that's what I've been looking for this year. Another thing that I truly love is, now I've been able to start workshops, and I've been doing online Zooms with people, and and spending a lot of time with people over the years, developing not only their trees but developing their awareness for their bonsai eye that we've all got, that internal little voice in our head that says what looks good on bonsai and what doesn't look good on bonsai, and developing that sort of thing. It's that the thing I really look forward to is that light bulb moment that people get when you start talking about something or you start explaining something, and then they override what you're saying and they say, oh, that's right, because this means this and this is going to happen and that means that. And it's like, yeah, that's it. You're getting it. That's the most satisfying thing, I think, as someone in my position and as a bonsai professional in the education space that you can get is, it goes from that moment of tell me what to do to is this what it will happen? Is this what I should do? Is that correct? To, hey, look what I've done. Look at how this is developing. That's truly inspirational for me. And right now, it's giving me goosebumps up my arm, because that's what truly drives me, is to pass on as much information as I possibly can in a format that's truly accessible by everybody, not just a few, not just those special at a certain level. It's to everybody at any point, to make sure that the message or the format of the message can be for someone who's just been given their first bonsai for Christmas, to someone who's been doing it for 50 years and maybe wants to change the way they're doing things. And how do you get that through to them, or help them along the journey to say, well, not necessarily everything you've been doing is wrong, but now we know things differently and we do things differently. Where the information was all those years ago, which was correct at the time, has changed, because education is a great thing that we learn, we experiment, we work out new and better ways of doing things. And that's not to say that when someone listens back to this podcast in 10 years' time, doesn't listen to it and say, oh, geez, what a fool. What he was doing back then could have been done so much better. And I'm all for that. I'm completely open to any of those suggestions that, hey, this may be the way to do it. But there's got to be that solid foundation of evidence and proof to say, yeah, well, we changed because of this. I don't agree necessarily with change for the sake of change. I think that if we can make positive change with how we look after our trees going forward, then yeah, go for it. And let's share that information. Let's make sure that we pass it on to as many people as we possibly can in any format we can, because, the old adage, what's good for bonsai is good for all of us. If this hobby, if this passion thrives and more people get involved, then at a commercial end, more people will become involved as well, which means that overall that's really, really good for everybody involved in bonsai. It's not an elitist hobby. It's not something which is only for the few. This is something for the masses, because the buzz that I get every day from walking around and looking at these tiny little trees in pots, that's good for everybody. I know it has to be. It's like a fresh walk on a spring morning when you've got the sun coming out of the sky and the fresh cool breeze hitting your face. I mean, who doesn't want that? And looking at a tree and getting that feeling of eternal life, effectively, that goes on and on and on and never stops. And the more that we love them, the more they give back to us. There's nothing wrong with that. The other part that I really love too, thinking about my reflection on 2021, has been seeing improvements and developments in people's collections, in their trees, in them hitting their targets. And again, I'm not talking about prize-winning trees or anything like that, but it's that buzz that you look at something and someone might show you a photo and say, do you remember this tree? We talked about it last year and it looked like this, and we put this plan in place, and now look at it. This is what's happened to the tree. And it might not be that the tree is perfect in any sense of the form, but it's achieved the goals that were set for it. We've allowed a sacrifice branch to grow, which means that the tree's vigour is improved, which means that the trunk is thickened in a certain point, that a branch may have thickened, whatever it is. it's improved. It's taken that step forward. And that should be all of our target, is to continually have our trees take steps forward. No matter what we do with them, like I said previously, taking the long road to achieve a target is often better than a shortcut, which is going to take you longer anyway in the long term. So those minor steps that we can take to improve our collection in any form, by doing the small things, by doing the little things, the stuff that's boring as, the stuff that, it's not putting raffia on and snapping a tree in half. It's making sure that you're fertilising your trees, making sure that you're checking the soil content for moisture, that you're watering as they need them, that you're weeding. One of the most mundane tasks in the whole world, pulling out weeds from your pots. But it's one of the most important, because we all know those weeds are there to steal nutrients from your trees, which, might not seem like much for a tiny little weed, but it all adds up. It all counts. Every time you put something into the trees, your time and your effort and your care and your love, it comes back tenfold, because the tree's going to respond to what you're doing, because you're providing an optimal environment for that tree to go on and thrive and be the best it possibly can be as a bonsai. And isn't that what we're here for? Isn't that why we've got these things? So here's another little tidbit of information. And this is from someone who's done bonsai for a very long time, that takes great pride in every little thing that I do, and take great pride in my bonsai. I think that as a bonsai professional, or someone in the bonsai space, that you really need to stand behind your trees. Your trees need to do the talking for you a lot of the time. And the two greatest learning points I've ever had on working with bonsai, the two greatest. And I was sitting down the other night thinking about the podcast, taking my notes as I do. I was thinking, what can I pass on that will help the most? And here they are. Two greatest learning points I've ever had on working with bonsai. First one, timing. So the time of year, or the time that we do the work on our bonsai, is super important. It's one of the most important things that you'll ever do. So picking the correct time to do something or to not do something will mean that you'll have the greatest success. Now, this came up because I was doing decandling. So decandling, and I was thinking about, working through a YouTube video that got put together on my channel for decandling. And it was to break back, okay, what is decandling? That's easy. It's cutting everything off. What's the really important part about decandling? The really important part is, whether you should do it or not. If the tree's not strong enough, don't do it. But if you do decide you're going to do it, what's the most important thing? And the most important thing is, above technique, is timing. So making sure that you get the technique applied at the correct time of the year to a bonsai can be the decider in whether it's successful and your tree takes steps forward, or it's not successful and your tree starts going backwards. And that got me thinking, well, timing is everything for what we do. Pruning, as I was saying before, like a flowering tree, prune it consistently, prune it too hard, too late, you might not get flowers on the thing. So therefore, what makes you smile, what the reason for you to enjoy that bonsai in your collection may not be there because your timing was out. Working on trees and pruning them at the wrong time, or repotting out of season. Repotting is, I've gone on and on and on about repotting, and I get asked, I reckon it's probably one of the most commonly asked questions is, can I repot that now? It's no, you can't. Why can't I? Because the timing's not right. You need the tree to be at the optimal time for it to be repotted. Now, it sounds mundane. It sounds kind of irrelevant, but it's not. I think that timing is one of the most important aspects for developing your bonsai to get right. And this is where it gets really confusing. And I've been where everyone listening to this is, where you look online and you'll see a bonsai care calendar. And you'll go, great, that's what I need. I need the formula. That's exactly what I need. You download it, you look at it, you study it, you go, yep, no worries. Ah, cool, okay, that's the northern hemisphere, I'm in the southern hemisphere. So that doesn't work for me. The months are 6 months out. And then you start working through it and you go, actually, I wonder where this was written. Where I am, I don't get snow over winter. It gets cold, but it's not freezing, and I definitely don't get ground coverage. So is putting all my trees into a hothouse and caring for them the right thing to do or not? So the calendars are great if you're within the microclimate of the person that's put them together, and I see the value in them in that circumstance. But take that away, and it's very different, So your timing is not something that you can just download and say, well, I've talked so many times about not mechanically just doing a process because it says to do the process, and timing for doing it is by far the most important. If you get the timing right on working with your trees, then that constant push forward that we want to have, it's just not going to happen. So there needs to be some kind of care or notes or presumptive thought go into when you do look at these bonsai care calendars and stuff like that you've got to make sure that they're relevant to you, and make sure that they're relevant to your environment and to your trees, your species as well. It's so, from where I sit, I'm really cautious about giving advice to anybody, anywhere, because I know that when I look after my trees and where I am, I know that certain times of the year I can say, yes, this is what you will do at that time of the year. But, I need to quickly adjust. If someone from Northern Australia contacts me about looking after trees, and my mindset has to switch and say, well, okay, mine respond well, or this species responds well at this time of year, and this is what happens. So when would that be for you? And you can sort of nut things out. You can work out the best time for things to happen together, but you definitely can't just presume and say, well, I always do that in November, so you should always do that in November. It's a great way for someone to kill a tree, or best case, set it back. So that's number one.
I spend my youth dropping coins in a wishing well.
All right, so now number two. And number two is by far the hardest. Number two is by far the most frustrating, and it's the one that nags on everybody. The second most important, the second greatest learning point that I've had working with bonsai is time. Sometimes it just takes time for these things. And I know it's hard. I know it's frustrating. I know people want to keep jumping ahead, and when you see these steps happening, especially on younger trees, you see your bonsai starting to develop really quickly. Your primary branches pop out, they start to thicken, your trunk starts to look great, you're throwing it in a bonsai pot. This is awesome. How good is this? This is happening so fast, and then it all slows down. The resources that were being shared amongst 5 or 6 branches suddenly have to get shared amongst 20 or 30. And then 20 or 30 becomes 50, becomes 100. And everything starts to slow down. So your development really reaches a crescendo, and that's when patience comes into it. That's when us sitting back with our scissors in hand, put the scissors down and just give it time. It's the hardest thing to get right, because especially if you only have a few trees in your collection, the hobby that was all-consuming at one point suddenly starts to slow down, because, the trees, instead of being worked on 5, 6, 7, 8 times a year, now it's once. Some of my junipers that I work with, it's 12-month cycle on these things now. So if I only had that one tree, then sort of it would sit there, and that's when interest can start to wane, because it's not something that you're actively involved with every day. Maybe, it's the same, I'm not going to go back out and see it. But the bonsai might need water. Yeah, I'll do fertilising next week. Nothing's going to change anyway. It stays the same. Tree needs the food. So time is the hardest thing to get right. And this is where I think it's really important that, I say this all the time, that you need to have a certain number of trees in your collection of different varieties, of different species that require different work at different times of the year, just so you can stay actively involved. And the hobby stays that for you. It stays something that you're interested in, because once your interest starts to wane, the cost for that is the health of your bonsai, is the health of your trees. And ultimately, they're going to pay the price, and you're going, that's it. Put the tools away, pack the pots up, put them in the shed and move on. But I think that if you can have a certain number of trees in your collection, and that certain number, that's entirely up to you guys. But I think that, around the 10 to 20 range of trees at different stages of development will teach you patience, will teach you to be active, will teach you to make sure that you look at your trees every day. Having young trees that are developing so quickly that you put wire on and a week later it's cutting in is great, because you're always actively working with those trees. And then in the same collection, have a tree that possibly, is a more finished, refined stage of things that, you put wire on, it can stay there for 6-12 months, because the tree just doesn't do enough, doesn't develop quick enough that you have to be concerned with it cutting in. And it's still really important to have those two trees sitting side by side on the bench, so you can do the comparisons with them. And suddenly that patience comes into it, and you learn, on one hand, yes, active involvement, but on the other hand, it's active patience. It's gently looking at the tree, checking it for pests every day, making sure that the tree's got water when it needs it, making sure it's in the correct position as the seasons change, the sun drops on the horizon. What was an ideal spot for it a few weeks ago maybe isn't an ideal spot for that tree now. So maybe it needs to be shuffled a little bit to get a bit more sunshine during the day. As it gets hotter, maybe move it away from the afternoon sun where it cooks, or where it's sitting beside a fence, something like that. But time and you allowing for time to pass is one of the hardest things, as someone who actively loves bonsai and loves working with bonsai and loves that feeling that you get when you work on a bonsai and it takes a step forward, and it looks better, and it suddenly responds to what you're doing. Allowing for time to pass can be a very frustrating and almost uncomfortable thing to have happen, but it is one of the greatest learning points that I've ever had working with bonsai. So what else has 2021 taught me? 2021 has taught me to look for new areas to try and help and be a positive force in the world of bonsai. So hopefully by now you've seen the Bonsai Matsu YouTube channel. If you haven't, check it out, have a look. But my focus with that has been, I was thinking a while ago that it's something I'd like to do, just to document things and possibly offer positive reinforcement of different things that I talk about and what I do, and to make sure that there's backup, I suppose, for anybody to call upon at any point in time as a resource for what they need to do to help themselves. So I was also thinking about it from the point of view that it's a great way to communicate in this age where the COVID has had an impact on people's ability to get together. But that didn't change the fact that bonsai still needs care. So even though face to face, I couldn't get together with people for a period of time, it didn't mean that I couldn't still be there as a resource for people to call upon and to look at. And I know from my point of view, when I watch YouTube videos, especially instructional ones, whether it's how to clear a blocked dishwasher or whatever it is, I know it's the sort of thing that you use it as a resource to look at, stop, pause, do something, then come back, review it, do it again, whatever it is. So I thought to myself, 2021 is a great time for me to think about implementing that for bonsai. And I talked to myself, as I often do, like a madman, and thought, okay, well, if I do it, it's not just to fill people's time in. This is, I think there's far too many people wasting other people's time in the world at the moment, and it needs to be something which had value to everybody that watches it. So I wrote down, it's got to be honest. So it can't be something, this is what I say, but I don't do that. So it had to be, I'm going to show the honest way that I approach things and how I do things. And that might not be for everybody, but hopefully it's for the majority. It had to be informative. It had to have a purpose. Every time there was a video put up, it had to have a purpose. It had to be to achieve something for somebody else that could go, right. It's one of those light bulb moments that I talked about, or maybe just to reaffirm exactly what people have been doing in the past. Yeah, yes, I like the look of Scott's trees, and yep, I'm doing exactly the same thing. So bang, it's informative. And it's got to be useful. It's got to be to the point where you can get something from it and then apply it within your own constraints of what you've got. As I said, it's really difficult offering advice to people based on microclimates and environments that they live in. But I thought this would be the next best thing where I can show techniques, like the decandling process, for instance. It's the same process that gets done around the world where decandling is done. The timing for it's different. The timing for it's unique. And that's what I stress in the video as well. But the technique, that's the useful part, is you can see how decandling is done and then apply it to your own situation. So they were the three things: honest, informative, and useful. That's where I really wanted the YouTube channel to go and to continue going. And that's my aim going into 2022, is to continue along that path and have a not only at the moment it's the knowledge side of things that I'm trying to put into a video format to get out there as much as I possibly can, species specific or technique specific, that people can maybe, or that anybody can gain something from. And then it'll go into the niceties of styling trees and all that sort of stuff too. So there'll be advancements with it, but at the moment it's purely the informative side that I want to do. So that's where this year has led to something positive for me with bonsai, in that it's sort of developed down that path. So my thoughts on bonsai in 2021 from my point of view, and this is purely my point of view, but I think it's really positive. Really, really positive. I think that it's been a great year for bonsai all round, in that we're all becoming more educated. We're all becoming smarter with bonsai, more horticulturally sound. I think that, we're going in the right direction as a bonsai community. From what you see online and around the world, there's a lot more people now valuing the quality of a good, consistent education in bonsai. People are doing courses. People are searching out. People are asking questions, which is fantastic. It's awesome that people have got a means to seek further education. No more flying solo in the dark or reading antiquated books or magazines, or applying techniques that you fumble through and you your bonsai barely survives the process. Now it's about, everyone's seriously looking at how do I get it to the next level, and the focus is, from my perspective, is really starting to change now to the base horticultural principles, where you're looking at the strength and longevity of your trees as primary focus, and then from that comes the secondary of the styling. Very few people that I come across these days ignore the horticultural, ignore the strength and vitality for the design. It used to be the case. I used to find that years and years ago that it would be, just ignore that. Don't worry about the pot. Don't worry about the roots. Just how do I bend this branch? How do I do this? How do I do that? It's not that anymore. It's okay. So, when I ask about history on trees, or talk about things, okay, well, it was repotted. I used this mix. I did this. I did that. And it's like, it's so cool that the focus now is on the strength of the tree, the roots of the tree, and that is paying dividends a millionfold over styling a tree to the finished point, and then worrying about the core base or the core strength factors for the tree. That's not happening. So I think that I'm seeing a lot more people wanting to get that real base to really build a solid foundation and to grow from that. And that's where we can take massive leaps forward. So, the bonsai world, 2021 may have put a lot of things on hold, bonsai shows and that sort of thing. But, and that can be, you can look at it from a down and dreary point of view and go, oh, well, this didn't happen and that didn't happen and, it's not fair or whatever. But how cool is it going to be that, when we do get bonsai shows back, with this focus being on the strength of the trees and the development, how many new beautiful trees are we going to see on display at these shows that we go to? Because it's not just the same old trees with the same old bonsai practitioner doing the same old thing and not sharing information about how they do things. Now we're all becoming far more educated and far more advanced in our care techniques that, those trees, everybody's got a chance now at putting trees on display, and everybody's, when you go there, it's like, wow, I haven't seen that tree before. That's amazing. That's cool. And you grab the owner of the tree and, hey, tell me about it. What have you done? How did you do it? And I guarantee you somewhere in there that we talk about soil mix and fertilising and care techniques that they use for making sure their trees are optimal performance, and all that stuff that's the boring horticultural stuff. People are really, really excited about that stuff now, and that's where I see a massive positive change in bonsai, and 2021 has given time to everybody to maybe spend more time with your trees, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's the real silver lining of everything.
We bless the sun 'cause it gave light to our days. We cursed our youth.
So I'm in Melbourne, Australia, Victoria, one of the southern states, and I bring that up just purely because of the region that I'm in, and the region I'm in dictates the sort of work that I'm doing on my trees, and that's what I want to talk about now. So we're heading in towards late December now, so we're nearly the end of the first month of summer, and I just want to talk about what I'm working on in the garden as well, just to sort of give everyone a bit of a heads up, I suppose. So decandling season is finished for me with my black pines. Thank goodness. Wipe of my brow, my sweaty brow. It's all done for another year, which is great, and it's also a very rewarding time. It's lots of work, and I appreciate that. And the 1 to 2 that I've talked about, where one branch turns into 2, means that the decandling work doubles every year. But I love it because I get to get close to my trees, and you get to see them, the steps they've taken. Yesterday I went around and looked at some of the trees that I already started decandling earlier in December, and the new buds are also already starting to push, and everything's happening the way it should be happening, which is fantastic. It's really nice to know that you've got things right and that your care's been good and the timing's spot on and everything's starting to look great. So decandling season for me is done and dusted, and I'm ready to move on to the next thing. So the next thing I've been doing is working with my radiata pines. I've got a few of those, and Scots pines, where I'm doing a bit of a summer cleanup for those trees, and also I'm doing candle cutting. So candle cutting, I posted a thing on Instagram about it with radiata that I work with. It's not decandling, it's cutting into the new candle to force back budding on the tree. So where the new shoots have all shot out and taken off, I cut back into the new candle, and it forces back budding and keeps the growth, because the trees are refined, right? So they're at the final stages of their development. I'm not looking to do anything new and fancy with them, so I don't need sacrifice branches. I'm just looking to maintain my silhouette and health and vigor of the tree, and that's where the candle cutting comes into it. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. I've got another couple of days of candle cutting trees out the back and cleaning them up a little bit and making sure that they stay on track. Been working a lot with cedars as well at the moment, plucking the old needles, cleaning the underneath side of the pad to keep them nice and crisp, working on the shape of my pads. So when you look top down on the pads, to make sure they've got the shape that I want, like, if you pick a shape, say the ace of cards, you want that sort of shape where it's got that rounded to a narrowish sort of point. Well, I do anyway. And then I start working on my pad profile, which is the doming shape of the pad, or the cloud. It's often referred to as that shape. So when I'm pruning, I'm keeping that in mind. So it's 1, clean underneath the pads. 2nd, get my pad shape from top down. 3rdly, get my pad profile, which is the top part, sorted as well. And that then moves into my next round of work, which is going to be on my junipers, which I do over summer as well. Not that they can't be done other times of the year, it's just the only time I don't have other work to do. When it starts to quieten down a little bit, I can then work into my junipers, and I do exactly the same process. Clean underneath the pads, get my pad shape, then start working on my pad profile as well. So if you could see me now rather than hear me, you'd see my hands waving around, going underneath the pad, around the pad, and then over the pad. That's the process that I work on every single time I work on my trees, at that pointy end of being a finished tree. So that's my focus for the next little bit. Another thing with my Australian natives, also everything's had a nice big shoot of growth. Next part of my workload is to go through and manage some of that native growth as well, and start pruning it back. They love the warmth, they love the hot. That's when the growing season really kicks in for these things. So lots of water for them, and lots of sunshine, lots of native fertilizer, and they just take off. So that's another thing that I'll need to be working on in the relatively near future as well. So that's what's going on around the grounds at Bonsai Matsu. It's always busy. It's always got something to do, which is what I love. I love having, like I said before, I love having trees of different species that need work at different times of the year. So I don't get idle hands and start going back to trees that possibly I should be leaving alone. I make sure that I've always got something that needs my attention and needs my work, so I can focus on it. And therefore, I can get, the timing right, but I can also have the time needed in between working on the trees to make sure that they can achieve the goals that I've set for them. So everything comes together like a beautifully integrated plan with my bonsai. I did notice when I was walking around the garden last couple of days that after defoliation, which I did back in November, so a month ago-ish, thereabouts, I think I talked about it in the last podcast anyway, so I was around about then. And so as a result of that, there's been plenty of new growth, like the deciduous that have been through the defoliation, partial, area-specific, full, whatever, they've shot away. So that new growth, that's another flush of growth that I was hoping for. It's been achieved, looks great, but with that brought a lot of pests as well. So I've had to manage that around the garden as well. That should be just a gentle reminder for anyone that's been through that process as well. It's probably a good time with that lush foliage as the rest of your trees in the garden are starting to harden off. The bugs do love to move into that soft, fresh growth, the soft, lush growth that comes around after we do certain techniques like defoliation on our trees. So probably a gentle reminder that might be worthwhile just having a look around and checking underneath the leaves to see if anything's happening that you're not aware of before it gets to the point of no return. So the final thought for this podcast for me and where I'm at with everything with bonsai is this year's taught me to be far more conscious about other people and to think as they think, and to value the effort that it takes for someone to reach out and get in touch with you, because it's not the sort of thing that I would do gently. So from my perspective, I've always said that I appreciate and I love it when people get in touch with me, but I've always had it in the back of my mind that yep, cool, no worries, I'll do what I can. But this year's taught me to think far more about other people and think about their needs, and to be responsive, to make sure that I continue to do what I've done in the past, but just be as responsive as I possibly can to people and answer their questions or help or guide them exactly like I would want to be. When let's say you're ringing a service provider, electricity provider, right? You contact them, you reach out and go, hey, listen, power's off, what should I do? Would you calmly expect a 3-week wait for them to get back to you and say, oh yeah, just go out the front and check your fuses, maybe one of them's blown? I don't think that I would. I think I'd probably lose my marbles by then. So I try and keep that in the back of my mind, that when I do have someone reach out to me, that it's not something they do gently. It's something that takes a bit of effort, and possibly there's something on the other end of it that needs attention from me, which, a 2-minute response from me might make a massive difference to someone at the other end that's concerned. Whether I can help or whether I can't, that doesn't matter. The responsiveness is something that I've really focused on, and to put myself in someone else's shoes, which I think we all should. So, you have someone reach out to you and ask you for help, no matter what you're doing in this day and age. I think that as a species, as human beings, I think the least we can do is be responsive. So I've definitely tried to do that from my point of view, which hopefully has made an impact. I know it certainly makes me feel better. That's what I get out of it is, when my wife sits there and sees me on the couch at 10:30 at night saying, what are you doing? It's like, I've just got to get back to someone. They've asked for advice on this, what? And she's like, what are you going to say? And I go, nothing. I'm just going to communicate with them and say, well, tell me more about it. Tell me this, tell me that. And that's where I get something out of it. So that's what 2021's taught me, and the last couple of years is to put myself in someone else's shoes, which it's not a bad thing for all of us. Hey, well, that's us done. And I say us because it is us. You guys stick around for the journey as much as I'm here for the journey as well, and I love it. I see the number of people that listen to the podcast, and it blows my mind. And I see the positive reinforcement that I get from people, asking me to keep going on and record this. And, I suppose I started it with one intent, and that's stuck solid and true to this day, that I try and be a really positive light in the world of bonsai. And hopefully, like today, there's been no talk about techniques, but I'm really hoping that from today's podcast, I provide that spark that makes you just go around the trees one more time, that makes you smile when you walk through and go, you know what, I have achieved something. Or, maybe I've had to wait a little longer than what I wanted to, but the bonsai says thank you, and therefore, I've achieved what I wanted to achieve by just stopping and leaving things be for a little bit. So that's what I want. That's what I love. Bonsai makes me smile, and if I can pass on some of that gratitude that I have to you, to everybody that listens to the podcast, or that stops by Instagram, or that you're sitting down having your coffee break and you watch me on YouTube cut something off a tree and it makes you smile, well, mission achieved for me. So it makes me happy. I'm hoping it makes you guys happy too. So thank you for checking in. Thanks for sticking around as always. And this podcast is going on next year. It'll continue in the same sort of format, and I've got plenty more to talk about. It seems to be one thing that's developed with me is the ability to go on and on and on and on about something that I'm passionate about, and I'm very passionate about good quality information coming to everybody in an accessible format about bonsai. So anything that I can do to help that, anything that I can pick up and pass along, anything that I can do to make you guys, love your bonsai more, then I'm going to do it. So thank you. It's been another great year for bonsai. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to what next year brings. So stick around, have a look at if you haven't, Instagram, Bonsai Matsu, or Facebook. Those two sort of link together. Now the Bonsai Matsu YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe to it too when you can, because it'll keep you up to date with what's happening. And comment. Let me know what's going on. Stay in touch if I can ever help with anything. Scott@bonsaimatsu.com, or via messaging through any of the social medias. That's great. I do definitely get back in touch. Nothing goes ignored. Have a great year. Enjoy the celebration and festive season that's about to come upon us, and bring on 2022. It's going to be a great year for bonsai. Till then, happy bonsai.